We turn next to the Outstanding Lawyer Award, and to present it, a doughty friend of the Magnitsky Awards. Kyle Parker has been a leader of the Magnitsky movement since its very inception in 2009, when he learned that Sergei was being subjected to increasingly torturous conditions in Russian detention centers. For his work, he received death threats from Russia. He was sanctioned by the Kremlin, and in 2018 was one of the 11 US officials that Vladimir Putin asked the then President Donald Trump for permission to interrogate. Please welcome to present the Outstanding Lawyer Award, Kyle Parker.
Thank you, James, for that kind introduction. It's an honor to present our next award for Outstanding Human Rights Lawyer to Brandon Silver. Brandon is the founding director of policy and projects at the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights in Montreal. He's a leading international human rights lawyer and a protege of Irwin Cotler, former Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Irwin himself received the Magnitsky Award in 2015, is a founding member of our movement, and a true human rights hero. Brandon's forceful and effective human rights advocacy can rightly be described as grounded in moral principle and expeditionary in scope. From fighting for prisoners of conscience like Jimmy Lai in China, to standing with Iranian women protesting a cruel regime, to pushing Western governments to prosecute Vladimir Putin for the crime of aggression against Ukrainians, to his tireless advocacy on behalf of the hostages held by Hamas since October 7th of last year. Brandon brings incredible heart, boundless energy, a true sense of vocation, and formidable legal prowess to bear on keeping their causes in the public eye, which helps to keep them alive. We've all just witnessed concrete proof of this in Vladimir Kara-Murza, who stood here at this podium after having spent over 2 torturous years in Putin's Siberian gulag for opposing Russia's genocidal war against Ukraine. Brandon was instrumental in Canadian efforts to recognize Vladimir as a political prisoner, to sanction his captors, to grant him the protection of honorary citizenship, and ultimately to help secure his release and return to his family and to this room full of friends. Brandon, thank you for all that you do on behalf of those who save our civilization by their acts of fearless integrity. Please join me in welcoming Brandon on stage to collect this well-deserved award. Thank you, Kyle, for that very kind and generous introduction and for your leadership that underpins the success of the Magnitsky movement and this gathering this evening. And thank you in particular, Bill, and to the members of the jury for this very humbling and
moving award, which is simply a testament to the justness of the cases and causes I have had the immense privilege to be a part of, and to the friends and mentors I have been lucky enough to work with and learn from, and there are so many of you in the room today. But my greatest mentor and role model of all, Kyle referenced, Professor Erwin Kotler, regrettably could not be here in the audience with you this evening because he's the subject of a foreign state assassination plot in Canada that precluded his travel here. And that just underscores, which many of you here know all too well, the grave threats facing human rights defenders. But now, even in Western democracies, the threats facing those defending human rights defenders and the lawyers working on these cases, and just really stresses the urgency of our democracies working concertedly and collectively to mitigate these threats. But this evening, I'm thinking especially about my late grandparents of blessed memory who were survivors of the Holocaust and came to Canada as refugees. And growing up hearing their stories of what they had been through was a stark reminder that evil does exist in this world. I think it's personal and can touch the lives of those you love most, but also that democratic norms, human rights principles are crucial and fragile, and that we have to keep standing up and fighting for them. And while the Nazis were defeated, the evil they represented persists today. And we see it around the world in the growing authoritarianism, in mass atrocities, in a lot of the cases that you saw on those screens. But at the same time, I draw hope from the brave dissidents who are on the front lines every day fighting to uphold our shared democratic norms and principles, and at great personal cost. So, immediately I think of Jimmy Lai, whose son Sebastian is here in the audience, and whose incredible legal team at Dowdy, Keelan, and Jonathan and Tatiana are all in the room. And at 76 years old, with diabetes, he's currently sitting in a prison cell in Hong Kong when he could have easily fled, come to the UK as a British citizen, but instead he chose to stay and to fight for freedom in Hong Kong, and his trial is resuming in just a few days, and we should all speak out and call for his release. And I think also of the hundreds of Russian political prisoners who bravely stood up and spoke out against Vladimir Putin's illegal and unjustified aggression against Ukrainians, and for that are sitting in Siberian gulags. And as Vladimir Kara-Murza likes to remind us all, once these proposed peace negotiations are coming about, we must not forget that those Russian political prisoners, their release, those who are going to be the future of a post-Putin peaceful Russia, must be a priority. And I'm thinking of the brave Iranian women who, despite being murdered and maimed, continue to take to the streets of Tehran to call for the equality that they deserve and that is enshrined in international law, and that the torturers of Tehran continue to come to the UK, to Canada and elsewhere to fund that oppression. So we must heed their call to use the Magnitsky Law to sanction the Ayatollah of Iran and to sanction the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps in its entirety as a terrorist entity. Canada just did so, the UK should do so as well. And finally, I'm thinking about all those humanitarians, peace activists, who are currently being tortured as we speak in Hamas's terror tunnels. This is a standalone humanitarian issue, a standing crime against humanity, and all of us, civil society, government, should continue to call for their immediate and unconditional release. But what gives me hope amongst all of this was seeing Vladimir Kara-Murza on the stage just moments ago, and his constant refrain that, as an historian, I know that history is on our side. So Vladimir is an embodiment of that line he would always share with us. Seeing him here is proof that, that moral arc of the universe does bend towards justice. But I would add that it is the courageous, brave, and good people like Vladimir and good policies like the Magnitsky Law that continue to bend that arc. So may this 10th anniversary of the Magnitsky Awards be not only an act of remembrance, which it is, but also a remembrance that, like Sergei Magnitsky, we must always act. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I mean, no disrespect to Kyle, but the winners seem to get younger every year at the Magnitsky Awards.